Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Resident Evil Remake. In the last bit we continued exploring through the mansion, getting a few more death masks in the process, and at the moment Rebecca's over at the bar that we just left, practicing the Moonlit Sonata. Her learning that and getting it ready for what we need it for is a time-based event, I believe. So in the meanwhile, we're gonna go do something else. In specific, there is actively a puzzle we have yet to do in another room that we've been near, so we want to head over here back towards the eastern wing staircase, and head back towards the room I opened with the armor key, which that zombie just burst out of. Something to note, I think when enemies burst into a room like that but do the slow animation where the door slowly opens, if you get through a door fast enough while that's going on, I think they're not counted as spawned into the room yet. Because I know that's definitely a thing with the Crimson Heads and one other enemy type that have longer death animations. If you leave mid-death animation, they'll still be alive when you come back, and I believe back at max health, so be careful with that. Also, we're coming back over to this bedroom really quick. Since I already have 2 green herbs in my inventory, might as well max that out at a 3 green herb mix. Gonna be good for any potential larger encounters coming up. Now, this room and the one we're about to enter were in the original game. In fact, the note we're going to find in the next room was especially in the original game, albeit the script's a little different, of course. But notably, if you're playing the PS1 version for some reason using this as a guide, this is where you can find the lighter for Jill, since Chris has it inherently. We're not too far away from where you can find it as Jill here in Remake, though. Let's start with the file. Researcher's will. There's a letter. June 3rd, 1998. My dearest Alma, let me first apologize for not being able to call you. A man wearing sunglasses didn't permit any phone calls. Sorry, Alma. I sit here trying to think of where to begin, of how to explain in a few simple words all that's happened in my life since we last spoke, and already I fail. I hope this letter finds you well and that you'll forgive the tangents in my pen. This isn't easy for me. Even as I write, I can feel the simplest of concepts slipping away, lost to feelings of despair and confusion. But I have to tell you what's in my heart before I can rest. Alma, please believe that what I'm telling you is the truth. The entire story would take hours for me to tell you, and time is short, so accept these things as fact. Last month, there was an accident in the lab, and the virus we were studying leaked. All of my colleagues who were infected are dead or dying, and the nature of the disease is such that those still living have lost their senses. This virus robs its victims of their humanity, forcing them in their sickness to seek out and destroy life. Even as I write these words, I can hear them pressing against my door like mindless, hungry animals. Alma, I have tried to survive only to see you again, but my efforts only delay the inevitable. I am infected, and there's no cure for what'll follow, except to end my life before I lose the only thing that separates me from them. My love for you. In an hour, I'll have entered my eternal sleep where there is peace. Please understand. Please know that I'm sorry. Martin Crackhorn. Notably, if you're playing as Jill, a chunk of that note is ripped off for certain reasons. We want to investigate that picture frame over there to grab that specific golden hook. And over here we got some insect samples, but notably there's a lure of a bee here instead of a real bee. I forget what happens if you press the button right now, so just don't, out of caution. So if this is a lure of a bee, it's kind of missing a hook, but we just found a golden hook that probably will fit. So if we combine those, we actually get a full bee lure. And if we check over here, there's a bunch of fishing lures, but a real bee specimen. So now we just need to place the lure here and the actual bee back over at that other frame, and the puzzle here is completed. Something I do enjoy a lot about classic style Resident Evil to begin with, but Remake has a very good example of it overall, is that they do a good job of having puzzles that are active brain teasers, but also some that are pretty quick to figure out. Gives it a nice little pace of information progress. How that bee survives being thrown to the ground full force like that, I don't know, but that's just an annoying little enemy. Over there, though, we get the Wind Crest returning from the original game. It's now been moved over to that room, and you don't actually ever need to grab that. It's completely optional, but if you like having a good way to deal with boss fights later on, I really recommend grabbing it unless you're doing like a minimalist run of some kind. With that now grabbed, we now have probably passed enough time that Rebecca has finished practicing over at the bar on the first floor. So we're going to briefly make a stop in here at the safe room to check my inventory around, and then head over there to see her again. And if memory serves, I do take the slightly roundabout route here, and go back upstairs and go through the U-shaped room near where we first met Rebecca and Richard to get back to her. I could use the door on the first floor here and go through the painting puzzle room through to the tomb area into the main hall to get there a little more quickly and safely. But ultimately, I don't think it's worth it because, again, the doorknob coming from this direction for that door only works about 2 or 3 times before it breaks. And I'd rather save that for a more critical moment. Although I should note, I believe that doorknob itself only breaks on certain difficulties. Think like easy, normal, and maybe even just base hard mode, it'll do that. Not anything above that. And I think they lampshade that with the lack of text describing that in a later note of sorts. Also, I should note, there's actually one difficulty I didn't cover yet, and that's because it's exclusive to the HD remaster of the game. It's a very easy mode that is very aptly named because it takes so much damage for enemies to kill you in that mode that it's kind of funny. Honestly, if you're ever in the mood for just like a relaxed playthrough of this game, if that makes sense for a survival horror game, not a bad way to go through it if you just want to experience the atmosphere and story again, but I do think taking a lot of damage is critical for the atmosphere in this game in specific, so Mind you, I'm also the type who just plays a game on normal by default in any game to start. And if I go for a harder or easy difficulty from there, really depends on my experience with the base normal mode, because I find that's where games are usually balanced. Although very easy mode would have the advantage of being good for learning the route through the game, so you could just like study the layout of the mansion and all that there, and then go from there on a higher difficulty and use the knowledge from that. And I think that's a very smart thing to do, especially for like a second playthrough beyond.
Chris! Chris! I think I got it!
Practice makes perfect.
What's this?
And thus a new path is opened. In fact, if you look through the window, you can see the fountain we used the herbicide on earlier in the LP. Trevor's diary, November 24th, 1967. 11 days have passed since arriving on this estate. How did I end up like this? A guy in a lab coat came with a plate of skimpy meal and said to me, "Sorry to put you through this, but for security reasons." That's when it hit me. It all makes sense now. There are only 2 people that know the secret of this mansion. Sir Spencer and myself. If they kill me, Sir Spencer will be the only person that knows the secret. But for what purpose? It doesn't matter now. It's too dangerous here. My family. I hope they're all right. I've decided to escape. Jessica, Lisa, I pray you're safe. November 26th, 1967. How could I be so careless? I lost my favorite lighter, the one Jessica gave me for my birthday. Now it's going to be that much harder to get out of this dark place. November 13th, the date when my fate was sealed. My aunt was hospitalized just 3 days before that. Jessica and Lisa said they were going to visit her. I wish I could be there with them. But wait, even as I'm writing, my memory's coming back to me more vividly. Just before I passed out, I remember the men in the lab coat said something like, "Most likely your family's already..." I pray for their safety. November 27th, 1967. Somehow I managed to get out of that room. But getting out of this mansion won't be as easy. I have to get past all the booby traps. Tiger eyes, gold emblem. I have to try and remember for my own sake. And thus some of the mansion's history starts to come together.
Be careful, Chris.
Now, you may have noticed in the room where we just got the diary, there was a golden shield on that statue. That is the next key item we need, but on the way here, I actually forgot to grab something rather important that we need to grab that. Namely, you might remember all the way back as early as the first room we actually have control in the game, in the dining hall. There is a wooden shield on the wall. We need to grab that before we grab the gold one we just saw. I distinctly remember while recording, the cutscene of the wall in that bar raised started playing, and I went, "Oh, shit, I forgot the wooden emblem." That happens every here and again in this game, if only because these 2 destinations are so close to each other, I often don't think about it in routing as much. But yeah, that's kind of important, Howdy do, Jerry. How you doing? Get over here. Oh, you got a friend trying to visit us? I'd rather not. In either version of Resident Evil 1, this puzzle stands out to me not because it's really difficult, but mostly because it's probably the first mystery you're really going to encounter in the mansion in terms of finding a key item that you can place elsewhere but not know where to place. And there's something about it being the first of those that really makes it stand out to me, especially given the series' legacy. With that said, the reason I needed to go get the wooden emblem is that if you remove the gold emblem from the statue, that door lowers again. And you can place it back in just to put it back up in the case you don't have the wooden emblem, but if you place the wooden emblem, it accepts that and the wall raises so we can take the gold emblem elsewhere. In specific, we need to go place it exactly where we just got the wooden emblem. It's a key swap, effectively. Any thoughts on that, Rebecca?
Were you all right in there?
Yeah.
I mean, Rebecca, you can see down that hallway, there's not exactly anything of threat down there. Although I suppose, given how this mansion's revealed secrets thus far, there's nothing stopping there from being like a door that opens and then suddenly 8,000 arrows rain down upon anyone who tries to grab the gold emblem, huh? Yeah, excuse me again, Jerry. I don't know why I like giving one specific zombie in any given game on my own time a nickname. I think it's partially like the Shaun of the Dead in me or something like that, but I just enjoy leaving one alive if it's not really an issue for me to get around. And thus the clock has now opened up, making another puzzle available to us. A picture of two knights striking each other. The short sword has been thrust into the breast of the knight, while the long sword's pierced the head of the other. That is the hint for this puzzle, but assisting that is this text. When the two have run each other through, the path to your destiny will open. So, we got a short and long sword stabbing into someone over there, and what clocks have, but a short and long hand. We need to make it so that the hands of the clock match the swords of the painting. So, the minute hand needs to be at the 12 o'clock position, which it is by default, and the hour hand needs to be at the torso of armor at the 6 o'clock position, which means you'll need to swap the one hand to begin with. Thankfully, you also only need to worry about moving it in 90-degree increments, so you don't need to worry about moving it bit by bit by bit like a certain part of Final Fantasy VII, potentially. And doing that allows us to grab our next mansion key, and if we check it, this in specific is the shield key. With that said, if you've been checking every single door that's locked through the mansion thus far, you may have noticed there's only really one door that we need that for, because there's only one door it unlocks. We need to head back towards where we first met Rebecca and Richard again. It's at this point that the zombie I made specific note of over by where we're going, where the music sheet's first half was and all that, might have become a Crimson Head if you did things in a different order of operations and thus left it dead for too long. But even if it did, I think that Crimson Head spawns at the far end of like the T hallway, whereas you need to just go from one door straight across to the other here. So even then, it might not be a direct threat, but be wary all the same depending on how long you've taken doing certain things. Also, this specific zombie really is one I probably should have killed, because it's in my way just often enough, but oh well. I should also note that specifically around now, if you're doing your first playthrough, that I recommend placing a save if you haven't already, as we're coming up on dangerous enough stuff that it can be very handy. I don't, but that's because largely in a classic Resident Evil game, I only save like once or twice depending on the game, because I'm usually confident enough in my memory of the level design or dodging around enemies that I don't really need it. That's our one use of the shield key, so that's nice and emptied from our inventory. Let's see what we got in this really weirdly dingy door. Meet the Yawn. This is the snake that actually poisoned Richard earlier. But if we run around it, we can get our fourth death mask. And if you're quick, you can actually get through this room without actually having to encounter this thing at all. If you shoot it enough, I believe it does either feign death or run away. But largely, I'm just going to ignore it. With that said, depending on your order of operations of the game thus far, what happens there if you get hit will change. Because if you get hit, you actually get poisoned by the same venom that poisoned Richard. If you saved Richard, Rebecca will run up to you as you collapse in that hallway, and you'll play as her for a little bit to have to run over back towards the first floor West Wing save room to get another serum to cure Chris again. If you didn't save Richard, you have to go get the serum yourself back from the same room. With that said, if you get through that room without getting hit, you don't have to worry about that at all. So that's a couple of cutscenes we're technically missing out on, but oh well. With that said, our next goal is hopefully fairly clear. We've already placed 3 of the 4 death masks at the tomb behind where the main hall is. We want to go place the 4th one and take care of our first super long-term goal. On that note, if it's not in your inventory at the moment, either because you haven't grabbed it yet to begin with, or it's stored away in either of the item boxes, go and grab the shotgun before going to do this. You doesn't even need, like, all of the ammo within it. Like, half of its 6 total shells it can hold should be enough for what's coming up. But you're going to want it on you just in case, call it a hunch. Plus, if memory serves, there are also some shotgun shells down in here I haven't grabbed yet. So in the case you run low on ammo, you got that. Alright, let's see what's behind all these. Well, that was nice and ominous, but I guess it dropped down, and whatever we need is probably in that coffin, so let's take a look. Forced Crimson Head encounter. This in specific, I believe, is Crimson Head Prototype 1. It works the exact same as every other Crimson Head. Attack-wise, it'll either swipe at you or try to bite you. It's just beefier than some of the other zombies and Crimson Heads we've seen. With that said, 3 to 5-ish shotgun shells will bring it down, which is why I recommend bringing it in. Either a full clip will do, but also there's some shotgun shells over here to help you out. The handgun will work there. It'll just take a lot longer. But in the grave where it once was, there's now a switch that'll not only open the door, but there's also an item in here. This is a stone and metal object. If you've explored around more than we have in this LP, you can think of 2 places you can actually place that. There's a door at the back of the first floor of the main hall that requires 2 of those actively, but we only have 1. So you want to hit up where the other place we can use one is. We want to take this over to the hall not too far from us, actually, where the door that entered the painting puzzle was. But we want to now enter the only other door in that room we can enter that we haven't yet, directly across from the door that leads into this room in specific, actually. There is a zombie in the way, but either you can dodge around it or a single shotgun blast will probably put it down long enough for you to get past it. This is one of the reasons I really love this specific shortcut, because it really does a lot of good just to get you from the main hall over to this area very quickly, but also prevents you from having to deal with more enemies than you might want to deal with depending on your ammo reserves. Hey there, buddy. Swipe at me, and I'm just going to use your attack cooldown to get past you. Be careful in this room, though, because I think even if you don't have the stone and metal object yet, if you walk past a certain distance here, a Cerberus does spawn in, but I'm just trying to ignore it. There's something written in the indentation. The Defiler of the Accursed Coffin. Well, we've taken care of the Defiler of the Cursed Coffin already. If you look on the back of the stone metal object, the same pattern that is in this slot is on the back of it. So we can now open the door to my right and head off in that direction outside of the mansion. We're effectively roughly at the 1/3 point of the game at this point. We've explored as much of the mansion as we can, so it's time to go elsewhere. So in this room we have some items we can grab, namely a first aid spray, some shotgun shells, and a flash grenade. But notably, if you're familiar with the original game, you'll already have noticed something different. In the original game, the only doors in here were the one we just came through and the one opposite it. But now there's a little staircase down here that actively leads down a secondary path. You can go through the door directly opposite where we entered and get a couple of rooms deeper, but you'll quickly find you need a specific key to get any further. Hence, we need to go through the new pathway had it here in the remake first. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 6, we finally stepped foot out of the mansion for the first time since we entered the game. See you guys then.